The silk dress I bought to celebrate my financial intelligence award felt cold against my skin. He did not even look at the table, just straight at me. I cannot believe I ever lowered myself to marry you. You are not, and you will never be, on my level. I did not cry. Tears are for the weak, and I was not weak anymore. He wanted silence. I would give him silence so profound he would beg for the destruction. My name is Alara Vance. I am 35 years old, and I am a senior analyst at the Office of Regulatory Intelligence. The ORI is the agency you never hear about, the one that handles massive, complex financial crimes before they hit the headlines. Tonight, I was supposed to be celebrating. I'd just won a significant internal award for untangling a shell corporation network, and I had prepared a dinner to match the occasion. Julian Hayes, my husband, walked in 4 hours late. No call, no text. He didn't even look at the table, the braised short ribs cooling in their sauce, the wine I'd decanted, the linen napkins. He was on the partnership track at Sterling and Thorne LLP, the kind of law firm that measured associates by the gallon of blood they were willing to spill for billing hours. "What is all this?" he asked. His voice was flat, tired, and annoyed. "It's Tuesday," I said, keeping my own voice neutral. "I told you this morning. My award ceremony. I wanted to celebrate." Julian actually laughed. It was a short, sharp huff of air, devoid of humor. "Right, your award." He bypassed the dining room entirely, heading for the kitchen refrigerator to grab a bottle of water. "Ilara, I just sat through a 3-hour meeting finalizing my projected compensation for my first year as partner." He leaned against the marble island, watching me. "Do you have any idea what that number looks like? It is triple what you make at that glorified government desk job. Triple." I felt the silk of the dress I'd bought for the occasion slide against my skin. "Your 6-figure salary," he said, gesturing with the bottle, "is negligible. It's nothing. We are not operating in the same league. We aren't even playing the same sport." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. He had been distant for months, but this was new. This was surgical. "I need you to understand something," he continued, his voice dropping to the smooth, reasonable tone he used when explaining a complex legal point to a simple client. "My focus is absolute right now. From now on, I will decide when we talk, when we interact. I cannot have you clinging to me like some desperate puppy every time I walk in the door. I am building an empire, and you are a distraction." I must have flinched, though I didn't mean to. My lack of response seemed to anger him more than tears would have. He pushed off the counter and walked right up to me, close enough that I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. "I cannot believe I ever lowered myself to marry you. You are not, and you will never be, on my level." He waited, searching my face for the breakdown he expected, the validation that his words had landed. I did not cry. I did not beg or scream. The part of me that loved him, the part that had spent years making excuses for his ambition, simply went cold. It didn't break. It hardened, like steel quenched in ice. It was a moment of absolute terrifying clarity. The marriage was over. The asset was non-performing. The file was closed. Julian, seeing he wasn't getting the emotional outburst he wanted, just sighed a sound of profound disappointment and walked into his home office, shutting the door firmly behind him. I stood alone in the dining room for a long time. Self-pity felt like a heavy cloak I refused to put on. Instead, my training kicked in. At ORI, we have a protocol for psychological warfare. When your adversary dictates the terms of engagement, you comply. You comply so completely, so perfectly, that your obedience becomes their prison. He wanted distance. He wanted silence. He wanted me to stop clinging. Fine. I did not throw the plates. I methodically scraped the expensive, wasted dinner into the garbage disposal. I poured the $90 bottle of wine down the drain. I washed the good china, dried it, and put it back in the cabinet. I wiped down the counters until they shined. Then, I went to our master bedroom. I did not pack a suitcase. That would be too obvious, too emotional. I gathered my toothbrush, my skincare, my laptop, and the clothes I needed for work tomorrow. I took the spare set of sheets and the good pillows from the linen closet and walked down the hall to the guest bedroom. I made the bed. I plugged in my chargers. I established the first physical boundary. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the dark on the unfamiliar mattress, my laptop open, the screen glowing. I wasn't looking at old photos. I was opening a new, encrypted spreadsheet. I was outlining my assets, my debts, my exit strategy. And I was remembering the precise, agonizing dollar amount of the student loans I was still paying off, loans I had consolidated in my name years ago so Julian could get through law school without the burden of working, so he could focus entirely on the law review editorials that had landed him the coveted job at Sterling and Thorne. I had personally financed the construction of the pedestal he was now standing on, and he had just given me permission to kick it out from under him. I woke at 5 a.m. in the guest room. The alarm felt sharper in the unfamiliar space. I showered, dressed in my work clothes, and went to the kitchen. I measured coffee beans for one person. I used the single-serve pour-over, bypassing the 12-cup machine that held our shared routine. I made myself one piece of toast and ate it standing at the counter, reviewing an operations brief on my tablet. For the past 3 years, I had woken at this time to prepare Julian's breakfast, a 3-egg omelet with goat cheese and chives, a side of turkey bacon, and his coffee, black with 1 teaspoon of sugar, timed precisely for when he finished showering. This morning, the eggs remained in the refrigerator. The kitchen was sterile and silent when Julian entered at 7:15, knotting an expensive tie. He stopped, his eyes scanning the empty counters. He saw the empty stove, the clean, dry sink, and my single empty cup. "Coffee?" he asked. It was the reflexive question of a man expecting a service. I looked up from my tablet. I gave him the smile I reserve for a junior analyst at ORI who has just asked a redundant question, polite, brief, utterly impersonal. "I made a pour-over for myself," I said. He waited. The air crackled with the things I was supposed to say. "I'll make you some sorry. I didn't hear you coming." I said nothing. I returned my gaze to my tablet. Julian had been very clear. He would decide when we communicated. I was not to cling. I was respecting his boundaries. A muscle in his jaw tightened. He looked baffled, as if a household appliance had suddenly refused to turn on. But he was trapped by the very rules he had established the night before. He could not demand the attention he had explicitly forbidden. He grabbed his briefcase and left, slamming the front door, presumably late and uncaffeinated. That was the end of the omelets. It was also the end of my role as his unpaid executive assistant. In the past, I managed his life. I scheduled his haircuts, his dentist appointments, and his annual physical. I made sure his prescriptions were refilled. I ensured the automatic payments for his car and our mortgage were funded from the correct accounts. I reminded him of his mother's birthday. I coordinated the house cleaning and the landscaping. I handled the logistics for every client dinner he hosted. I stopped. All of it. I did not cancel the services. I simply removed myself as the managing partner. I let his calendar reminders go unanswered. I stopped balancing the joint checking account. He wanted to operate on a higher level. He could certainly manage his own dry cleaning. The hours that opened up in my life were staggering. The time I once spent optimizing his schedule, I now invested in my own. I dove back into my work at the ORI, taking on a complex derivatives fraud case that Julian had previously dismissed as alphabet soup and busy work. The complex analytical tools, the deep data dives, the quiet thrill of the hunt. This was the work he held in contempt, and it was the work where I thrived. My compliance had to be total. On Wednesday evening, while Julian was pacing the living room on a loud, aggressive conference call, I went into his home office. He kept his old smartphone in the top desk drawer, a model from 2 years ago, replaced but not discarded. I waited until he was distracted, deep in an argument about contractual obligations. I retrieved the old phone. I found him when he finally hung up, rubbing his temples. "Julian," I said, using my blandest colleague voice. He looked up, surprised I was speaking to him. "I need a favor for work," I said. "I have to run a diagnostic on a compromised network, and ORI protocols forbid me from using my secure device. I need to install a monitoring app on a clean, unsecured phone. Can I use your old one? I will need to factory reset it." He waved a hand, his mind already elsewhere. "Fine, whatever. I do not care what you do with it." I took the phone. I did not factory reset it. I installed a high-quality, voice-activated recording application. It was designed for investigative journalism, running invisibly in the background and configured to upload audio files in small data packets to an encrypted cloud server only I could access. I plugged it into a charger hidden behind his desk, activated it, and left it there. Julian often paced his office during his late-night calls, frequently using the speakerphone as he complained about pressure from the partners or the incompetence of his associates. Now, I would have a record of the man he was when I was not in the room. The final piece of my new strategy was reclaiming my life outside his shadow. He had isolated me, subtly at first, claiming my friends were a distraction or not, on our level. My best friend, Clara, whom I had not seen in 6 months because Julian did not like her energy, was my first call. "Ilara," she answered, her voice full of genuine shock. "Are you calling me from a hostage situation? Blink twice if you need rescue?" "I am scheduling my own rescue," I said. "Are you free Friday drinks? My treat." "I will cancel anything," she said. "Are you okay?" "I am," I said, and I was surprised to find I meant it. "I am just complying with new directives." The first test of Julian's New World Order arrived via text message that Friday afternoon. "Need my gray suit from the dry cleaner. They close at 6. Pick it up on your way home." It was not a question. It was a command disguised as a logistical fact. It was the casual assumption that my time and labor were his to deploy. It was the very clinging he had accused me of. Only in reverse. I looked at the message, then looked at the clock. It was 4:30. I remembered his words, cold and precise. "You are not on my level." I held my thumb over the screen. Then I deleted the message and shut down my computer. I left the office, met Clara at a bar downtown, and ordered a very expensive glass of bourbon. I did not check my phone again for the rest of an evening. Instead of doom-scrolling on my phone at 5:30 in the morning, I started driving across town to a gym. I signed up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It was something I had loved in my 20s, the technical, chess-like nature of it. I stopped when Julian and I moved in together. He had found it unrefined, worried that the occasional mat burns or bruises looked too rough and did not fit the polished image required of a future partner's wife. Now, the disciplined ache in my muscles felt grounding. It was a pain I had chosen, one I could control. The hours Julian had once consumed with his demands, his moods, his endless logistical needs were now entirely my own. I poured that reclaimed time into the derivatives fraud case at the ORI. It was a beautifully complex web of offshore accounts and synthetic assets designed to obscure a $30 million hole. Julian had always dismissed my work as glorified accounting. He saw his job, arguing in front of a judge, as the real intellectual heavy lifting. He never understood the difference. His job was performance. Mine was analysis. He thrived on rhetoric and charisma. I thrived on cold, hard data. I realized he had never respected my intelligence, only its utility, how my steady government salary could support his climb. Now, my intelligence was focused on a new target. His ecosystem was beginning to decay. Julian was a man who functioned on a precise set of external supports, all of which I had provided. By the second week of my silent compliance, the entropy was visible. His favorite snacks were not replenished in the pantry. The hamper in the master bathroom overflowed. He emerged one morning in a shirt that was visibly wrinkled, its collar points askew. He had clearly failed to navigate the complexities of the steam iron or the scheduling of the dry cleaning service. He started making more noise. He would pace, take calls on speakerphone, and sigh heavily. But he never broke the rule he had set. He never directly asked me for anything. He was waiting for me to break, to cling, to beg him to let me take care of him again. I just kept my headphones on. While he was focused on his shirts, I was moving assets. My work at Ori gave me a deep understanding of how to trace and how to hide money. It was laughably easy to apply those skills to my own life. I took a long lunch and drove to a credit union in a neighboring county, one that had no branches near our home or his firm. Using my maiden name and my old passport for identification, I opened a new checking account and a safe deposit box. I started liquidating my personal savings bonds, opting for paper checks, and began moving the cash, slowly and in amounts just under the reporting thresholds, into that box. It was my war chest. He escalated his performance. I would wake in the guest room at 2 a.m. to the sound of him typing furiously in his home office, the light spilling out from under the door. It was a clumsy, desperate bid for my attention, a performance of martyrdom. He wanted me to come to the door, to rub his shoulders, to tell him he was working too hard, to beg him to come to bed. The first time it happened, I got up. I went to the kitchen, poured a single glass of bottled water, and placed it on the floor just outside his office door. Then I went back to the guest room and locked the door. I heard him open the office door a minute later, see the water, and let out a sound of pure frustration. It was the only sound I needed. The psychological burden was shifting. We ran into one of his junior associates and his wife at the grocery store. The associate looked exhausted, but Julian looked worse, shadowed eyes, messy hair, the expensive suit hanging limply. "Julian, you look wrecked, man," the associate said. His wife looked at me, her expression a mix of pity and judgment. "Alara, you have to get him to slow down. He looks like he has not slept in a week." I gave her my polite, impersonal smile. "He is 100% focused on his promotion," I said, my voice light and supportive. "It is a huge moment for him. I am just respecting that focus." She blinked, the pity shifting to confusion. I had refused to accept the blame. I had validated his ambition while neatly placing the consequence of it, his visible collapse, directly on his own shoulders. The final step of this stage was containment. I could not risk Julian using my high-clearance job at ORI as leverage against me in a divorce, claiming I was unstable or that my sensitive work was a conflict of interest. The next morning, I filed the paperwork for a long-term, unpaid leave of absence. I cited urgent and pressing family matters as the reason. It was vague, professional, and unassailable. It also freed my schedule completely. I was now off the grid, my assets were secure, and I was fully prepared for the legal battle he had not yet realized was already here. My first meeting was not with a therapist. It was with Patricia Reeves. Her name was a closely guarded secret among the wives of surgeons, venture capitalists, and, yes, high-powered lawyers. Her office was a sterile expanse of glass and chrome on the 42nd floor, looking down on the financial district. Patricia was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, and possessed a gaze that seemed to calculate emotional distress in billable hours. She did not offer sympathy, she assessed leverage. I did not come with tears, I came with binders. "He told me I am not on his level," I began, sliding the first binder across the vast mahogany desk. "He established new rules. I am to be silent, and I am not to cling. I am complying." Patricia opened the binder. I had prepared a full financial disclosure, my pay stubs from the first 4 years of our marriage, when I was working 60-hour weeks at a private firm before moving to the ORI, the bank statements showing the direct transfers from my account to his, earmarked law school tuition, and the final tab the current statement for my consolidated student loans, the debt I had personally absorbed to keep his credit pristine. A thin, satisfied smile touched Patricia's lips. "Ms. Vance," she said, her voice crisp, "your husband is not just arrogant, he is a fool." She tapped the loan statement with a manicured finger. "His entire partnership track, the very level he claims to occupy, was subsidized. You were not a partner, you were his primary investor. His projected income is a direct result of your financial support. The court will see that. We will argue that his partnership itself is a marital asset, one you have a significant, quantifiable stake in. I nodded, expecting this. But then she leaned forward, and the assessment was over. The strategy session began. But here is the critical leverage. Elara, Sterling and Thorne is an old guard firm. I know them well. They are finalizing their partnership class right now. This is not just about the numbers. It is about image. They are looking for stability, for men who represent the firm's infallibility. She paused, letting the weight of it land. A messy divorce at this exact moment, from a wife who works in federal financial intelligence, a wife who might, say, allege that a future partner has been systematically hiding assets and financially exploiting her to fund his career. It is not partner material. I finished for her. It is a liability. It is a catastrophe, she corrected. Any significant personal instability, any whiff of scandal, and they will defer his promotion indefinitely. They cannot risk it. He has given you the gun, the ammunition, and he has pointed it at his own head. All you have to do is pull the trigger. When I returned to the cold guest room that night, I pulled out the new phone log I had started. I methodically documented every attempt Julian made to break the silence he had demanded. 17 missed calls in the last 4 days, 22 text messages. They had escalated quickly from simple logistics. Where is the plunger to confusion? Are you getting these? And, finally, to the righteous anger of a man whose commands were being obeyed too well. This is childish. Elara, I expect to talk to you tonight. I did not respond to a single one. I was giving him exactly what he asked for. My next move was pure Ori. I did not use our home network. I used a secured, anonymized terminal at the ORI annex. I ran a deep search on public corporate filings and LLC registrations. Julian was arrogant. He assumed my government desk job was dull-witted. He never imagined I would find the shell LLC he had incorporated 3 months ago, registered to a post office box in Delaware. It had exactly one asset, a significant seed investment in a private tech startup, funded from a brokerage account I had no knowledge of. He was already hiding his money. He was preparing to cut me loose the second the partnership was official. I saved the file, encrypted it, and sent it to Patricia. I needed a new base of operations. Julian hated the new developments downtown, calling them glass boxes for people with no taste. It was the perfect place to hide. I found a small, furnished apartment on the 19th floor of a new high-rise. It was anonymous, secure, and the last place on earth he would look for me. I began moving my essentials, the things that were truly mine and of no value to him, my grandmother's jewelry, my university degrees, the service award from the ORI, my passport. I moved them quietly, one gym bag at a time. I needed one final piece of confirmation. Damon was an old friend from my college economics program, and he was currently a third-year associate at Sterling and Thorne. He was brilliant, perpetually stressed, and, I knew, frequently dumped on by Julian. I texted him, pretending to be in his neighborhood for a meeting, and suggested a quick coffee for old time's sake. He looked exhausted when he met me, his tie already loosened at 10 in the morning. Elara, wow, you look. He paused, searching for the word. Calm. You do not, I replied, stirring my coffee. Rough quarter. Damon let out a bitter laugh. You have no idea. The partnership review is turning everyone into a monster, especially Julian. He lowered his voice. Look, I probably should not be saying this, but he is a nightmare. He is a complete tyrant. He demanded a junior associate redraft a minor brief at 3 a.m. just because he did not like the font. He screamed at a paralegal for misplacing a file he himself had. We are all walking on eggshells. He is brilliant, sure, but he is also alienating everyone who is supposed to be supporting him. The pressure is getting to him. It was exactly what Patricia had predicted. His internal support system was fracturing. He was becoming volatile, unpredictable. He was becoming a liability. I thanked Damon for the coffee, told him to hang in there, and walked away, my case file now complete. He was not just unstable at home, he was burning down his own office. Julian's calls started to breach the boundaries of business hours. My phone, which I kept on silent in my purse or in the guest room, would light up at 10 p.m., then again at midnight. Then a flurry of them starting at 6 a.m., just as I was leaving for the gym. They were frantic, desperate bursts of contact from a man who had demanded silence. I never answered. I let everyone go to voicemail, logging the timestamps for Patricia. The real story, however, was on the encrypted server, fed by the old phone in his office. I would listen to the audio files while I was on the treadmill, my headphones creating a sterile bubble. It was not the sound of a man building an empire. It was the sound of a man drowning in logistics. I do not know where the file is. Mark. I heard him snap, his voice thin and reedy. Ilara always handled the indexes for the client database. How am I supposed to find it? A heavy sigh. No, I missed the deadline because the primary reference data was misfiled. I cannot focus on the details when I have to do everyone else's job. He complained constantly. He complained about the junior associates, the pressure from the partners, and the fact that his shirts were wrinkled. He was admitting, to anyone who would listen, that he was failing. His strategy shifted on Thursday. A text message appeared. Table at Cinglial tonight. 8. Do not be late. Cinglial was my favorite restaurant, the one we went to for my birthday. He thought he could buy me back with expensive pasta and a bottle of Barolo. He thought this gesture, this command, was reconciliation. It was just another assertion of his power, his belief that he could snap his fingers and I would appear. I waited exactly 10 minutes. I typed the reply slowly, ensuring the grammar was perfect. Julian, as you said, you will decide when we talk. I am still waiting for that official decision. I sent it. I imagined him reading it at his desk, the confusion warring with his ego. He had set the trap, and I was simply refusing to step in it. I went to the apartment I was leasing downtown, a place he did not know existed, and ordered a pizza. The real crisis hit the following Monday. His disorganization was no longer a personal problem. It was becoming a professional one. My old desk phone at the ORI rang. It was the general line, which meant it was an external call, not one I would typically receive while on leave. I picked it up. Ms. Vance Ilara. The voice was young, frantic. Hi, this is Beth. I am a paralegal at Sterling and Thorne. I am so sorry to bother you. I work with Julian Hayes. Yes. We have a major filing due at 4 p.m., and he seems to have forgotten a key exhibit. It is a data analysis of... I knew exactly what it was. A complex financial breakdown I had helped him prepare 6 months prior, an analysis he had taken full credit for at the time. He said you kept a backup of all his pro bono files, she stammered. He insisted I call you. He was not just disorganized, he was incompetent without me. He was calling my federal office, while I was on leave, to ask me to do his job for him. I am sorry, I said, my voice cool and professional. I am on an official leave of absence. I do not have access to those files. You will have to ask Mr. Hayes directly. I hung up before she could respond. The fallout was immediate. That evening, I got a call from Damon. His voice was low, urgent. Ilara, what the hell is going on? Julian just tore through the office like a lunatic. He is missing a file, I said calmly. No, it is worse than that. You need to know. He is building a narrative against you. He told Marcus Sterling that you are the problem. He said you are having psychological problems from the stress at ORI. He claimed your career is stalled and that you are taking it out on him. There it was. He could not accept failure, so he was manufacturing mine. He was moving from neglect to slander. He was trying to discredit me before I could discredit him. Julian was attacking my reputation. I decided to attack his budget. Our joint account was set up for household expenses, But I knew he used it liberally for personal spending, the expensive lunches, the rounds of golf with clients, the subscription boxes he needed for his image. My paycheck provided the steady baseline liquidity. I went to my bank and rerouted my direct deposit. 100% of my salary now went to my private account at the credit union. I left exactly enough in the joint account to cover my half of the mortgage, and not 1 cent more. His next attempt to buy a $300 bottle of scotch for a client was going to be declined. He must have felt the financial pinch, because that night, he was waiting for me. I was walking from the kitchen to the guest room, carrying a glass of water. He blocked the hallway, standing there in his wrinkled shirt, his face pale with rage. "What do you want?" he demanded. His voice was raw. It was the first direct question he had asked me in 3 weeks. He had finally broken his own rule. I stopped. I looked at him, not as my husband, but as a subject I was analyzing. I saw the desperation. I saw the weakness. I smiled. It was the same polite, distant smile I had been practicing. "I am giving you exactly what you requested, Julian," I said, my voice quiet and steady. "I am respecting your boundaries. I am giving you your personal space." I paused, letting him absorb it. "You should enjoy it." I stepped around him. He did not follow. He just stood there, defeated by his own words. As I closed the guest room door, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I had been grieving the loss of a husband, the loss of love, but I was wrong. Julian did not miss me. He did not love me. He missed the free, high-functioning, invisible support system I provided. He missed his assistant, his bookkeeper, his scheduler, and his scapegoat. I was not a wife. I was infrastructure. And I had just shut down the entire grid. Patricia called 2 days later. Her voice had the low hum of a predator about to strike. "The time is now, Alara," she said. "The final partnership review meeting at Sterling and Thorne is scheduled for next Tuesday at 8 a.m. We dropped the papers on his desk this Friday afternoon." I could almost see the geometry of her plan: maximum impact, minimal time for Julian to mitigate the damage. He would be hit with the legal summons less than 96 hours before the most crucial meeting of his professional life. "I have something for you," I said, and I sent her the encrypted file detailing the Delaware LLC and the seed investment I had found. I watched the 3 dots appear on my screen as she read the attached analysis. "This is excellent," Patricia murmured. "A discreet investment, funded without your knowledge, 3 months before the partnership decision. It shows a clear intent to shield assets from equitable distribution. It confirms the entire narrative he was financially preparing to divorce you immediately after his income tripled. This is not just a breach of fiduciary duty, it is a serious ethical lapse for an attorney, especially one being evaluated." She dropped the final, devastating piece of intelligence. "I have done some digging on Sterling and Thorne's managing partners. Marcus Sterling, the man who holds the final vote, is notoriously old school. His entire public image is built on family values and corporate stability. A contentious, high-asset divorce, especially one involving allegations of financial exploitation and asset hiding, is not just a red flag. It is a disqualifying event for him." The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Julian had not felt I was beneath him because of my value. He felt I was beneath him because of my status. He had been planning to divorce me after the partnership solely to limit my claim on his newly massive income. The cruelty was not emotional, it was entirely financial. He needed to triple his money before he discarded the investment me that had made it possible. I spent that evening making my final exit. I did not take a moving van to our house, the house we had bought together, the one Julian now inhabited in chaos. I took my car. I carried out only the things that were undeniably mine and of no value to him: a box of old textbooks, my framed photo from the ORI award ceremony he had sneered at, a battered copy of the first book I ever bought him. I left the rest: the expensive furniture, the art, the silver. I left the house standing, silent and immaculate, a trap with an open door. I knew he would try every communication channel to reach me once the papers landed. He would use his work ethic as an excuse, his need to sort things out before the meeting. I drove straight to the nearest carrier store. I closed my personal mobile phone account and opened a new one, registering it under my maiden name at my new address downtown. I also deactivated my personal email. Julian now had only 2 ways to reach me via his lawyer, or through the highly secure internal communication system at the Office of Regulatory Intelligence. I contacted Patricia. "Tell him I have moved out," I instructed her. "Send him a brief letter from your office. State only this, that I have established a new private residence and that, for all upcoming legal proceedings, I will be reverting to my maiden name." I wanted him to know my name was no longer linked to his. I was not his wife. Alara Hayes, the woman who took care of him. I was Alara Vance, the analyst who now held all his secrets. The final preparations were complete. The silence was over. The counterattack was hours away. Monday morning. The clock had just struck 9. I was sitting at my temporary desk at the ORI Annex, reviewing the final draft of my fraud analysis. I was officially on leave, but I needed to tie off the last few knots before the week's main event. A text message vibrated across my private phone. It was Patricia, papers served. 10 minutes ago. Delivered by hand to his desk at Sterling and Thorne. Protocol followed. I paused. The paperwork was out. Julian was reading the petition for divorce and the accompanying financial disclosures. Right now. The timing was perfect, designed to detonate exactly 4 days before the final partnership vote. A few hours later, my internal ORI phone, the secure line, Julian did not even know the extension for, began to ring. The caller ID was external, routed through the general switchboard. I picked it up, expecting Patricia. "This is Alara Vance." "Ilara, it is Damon." His voice was a thin wire of panic stretched to the breaking point. "Listen to me. I do not have much time. I am calling from the supply closet." "Damon, what is happening?" He blew up. He completely lost it. The process server was very formal, very obvious, right in the middle of the associate bullpen. Julian tore the papers to shreds. He was yelling about a smear campaign and threatening to countersue you for emotional distress and slander. "He is telling everyone you are mentally unstable and that this is a vicious attack. He is going completely off the rails." He paused, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "The managing partners are in an emergency meeting. This is a 5-alarm fire. Ilara, they are terrified. That partnership is everything to him. You are killing him, professionally." "Good," I said, the word coming out cold and sharp. Damon inhaled sharply. Then his voice suddenly dropped to a whisper. "Wait, I hear someone. They are coming toward the closet." There was the sound of a quick, shuffling movement, and then a distinct click, the unmistakable sound of the phone being picked up by someone else. The line went silent for a beat. Then a new voice filled the receiver. It was deep, resonant, and heavy with the weight of absolute authority. "This is Marcus Sterling. Marcus Sterling, the senior managing partner of Sterling and Thorne LLP, the old guard man of stability and family values. The ultimate gatekeeper to Julian's future. He did not mention Julian's name. He did not ask about the papers. He went straight for the jugular. "Ms. Vance," Mr. Sterling said, his tone colder than any room in my house had ever been. "I am aware you work for the Office of Regulatory Intelligence. We have reviewed your background. I need to meet with you immediately. This involves grave issues of firm stability and the professional profile of a rising member of our organization." He was not calling to offer Julian support. He was calling to assess the threat I represented to his firm. "The information you possess, especially concerning certain private financial decisions and the funding of certain educational expenses." He continued, "The emphasis on those details, precise and damning, could be extremely damaging to the reputation of Sterling and Thorne. I must insist we handle this discreetly." The power of the moment was intoxicating. The man Julian worshipped, the man Julian desperately needed to impress, was calling me, the woman Julian deemed beneath him, to beg for discretion. My voice was steady, composed, entirely professional. Mr. Sterling, I appreciate your concern for the stability of your firm. However, as of this morning, all my communications regarding my dissolving marriage are directed through my legal counsel. I let him hear the finality of it. You will need to contact Patricia Reeves. I suggest you do so immediately. I heard a frustrated exhalation on the other end, but no argument. I hung up the secure line, placing the receiver back in the cradle with a quiet click. Julian had demanded silence, and I had given him a void. Now, his professional life was exploding because he had lost the one thing he needed to sustain his lie control. He had lost control of his finances, his temper, his narrative, and now his gatekeeper was calling me. The game had moved past Julian entirely. He was now just a chess piece, and Marcus Sterling had just realized I was the player. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Patricia called me back. Her usual professional reserve was cracked by a clear note of excitement. "Ilara," she said, "you will never guess who just got off the phone with me. Marcus Sterling." "Was he threatening?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "Threatening?" Patricia let out a short, sharp laugh. "No, he was begging." She explained that after my call, Mr. Sterling had apparently ordered an immediate, unofficial internal audit of Julian's files. He had seen the financial transfers, the debt I carried, and the evidence of the Delaware LLC, the shell company Julian had set up to hide assets. Marcus Sterling, the paragon of integrity, realized that if this divorce went public, Julian's professional ethics would be torn to shreds. The firm's reputation, already fragile during partnership reviews, would be stained by the revelation that one of its rising stars was financially exploiting his wife and concealing assets. "He does not care about Julian," Patricia stated. "He cares about Sterling and Thorne. He asked, point blank, what it would take to make this go away quietly. He promised a very generous out-of-court settlement to protect the firm's name. He wants the allegations of financial impropriety and personal instability to die right here, right now." It was a victory more profound than any courtroom ruling. The call did not come from Julian, the man who thought I was trash. It came from the entity Julian valued above all else, his status, his prestige, the firm that was his lifeblood. That was the real, surgical revenge. I had not just hurt him, I had attacked the very thing that defined him, using the resources and intelligence he had always dismissed. "Hold the line, Patricia," I instructed. "Tell him no. Tell him we are still reviewing the options." I knew Julian was frantic. He had lost control completely. Just then, a final message came through on the old burner phone I had left on my desk. The number he thought I was ignoring out of spite. "I know you got to them. I heard about the call from Sterling. You are kidnapping my reputation. I am not letting you get away with this. You broke the silence." I read it and smiled. He thought I was playing a childish game of spite. He still did not understand I was playing a game of financial intelligence. I composed a short, final email to be sent through Patricia's office to Julian and his recently hired, bewildered lawyer. It read, "Ilara Vance accepts the proposal to negotiate a settlement outside of court." Then came the condition. "However, the settlement meeting will not take place in your office, nor in a neutral third-party space. Julian Hayes is required to meet Ilara Vance at the Office of Regulatory Intelligence in her secure conference room to discuss his actual value." The request was a calculated psychological weapon. He had to walk into the building he deemed beneath him, the place he had mocked for years, and sit across the table from the woman he called worthless. I spent the rest of the day in a flow state, working on my final piece of evidence, a presentation. It was brief, elegant, and devastating. Using ORI market analysis techniques, I created a slide deck entitled "The Value Added Coefficient," an analysis of investment versus return, marital assets. It was a precise financial illustration that calculated my student loan payments, my salary contributions, and the lost opportunity cost of my time spent managing his career, quantifying exactly how many years I had accelerated his climb to partnership. I would not argue based on emotion. I would prove, with indisputable data, what I was worth and what his net worth actually was without me. Julian agreed to the meeting. He had no choice. The clock was ticking down to the final partnership vote, and his career was dangling by a thread. He needed to control the damage, and walking into the ORI was his final, humiliating opportunity to do it. My last official task before the confrontation was to return to the house. I had to collect the remaining personal documents and my high-security work badge that I had deliberately left behind. The silence I had enforced outside the home had been replaced by chaos inside it. The place was a disaster. Crumpled takeout containers sat on the counter beside the cooling grease of a forgotten pot. Dirty laundry was draped over the antique armchair Julian prized. He was living in a pigsty of his own making, unable to maintain the facade of his life without my labor. It was a visual confirmation of his dependency, and it gave me a clean, clinical satisfaction. As I was gathering a stack of tax forms, I opened the small porcelain bowl in the back of the kitchen drawer, the one where I used to keep spare change. My wedding ring was there, exactly where I had placed it 2 weeks earlier. I picked up the platinum band. It felt light, insignificant. I dropped it into a crisp, blank white envelope, sealed it, and addressed it to Julian's lawyer. No note, no explanation, just the object, handed over like a receipt for a failed transaction. I met Clara and Damon for coffee that evening, a final checkpoint before the main event. I have reached a settlement agreement, I told them, sipping my latte. Out of court. It is going to be quiet. Damon's jaw dropped. Quiet. How? After he went ballistic. Professional leverage, I explained simply. He is protecting the firm's image. My value is being restored. Clara, who had known me longer, leaned in, her eyes serious. There is something else you should know, she whispered. Julian's mother called me. She wanted to know why he was so thin. She asked why he did not have clean, ironed shirts. She blamed you, Alara. She said you were neglecting him. I felt a genuine, detached pity for Julian. Even his own mother saw me not as a person, but as a laundress and a chef. The system is failing him, not me, I replied. I think that is precisely what he needs to learn. The next morning, I drove to my jiu-jitsu gym for one final session. I did not focus on the aggression, I focused on the stillness. The art is about using the opponent's momentum against them, remaining calm while they expend all their energy. I needed that focus. I knew Julian would try to use guilt, anger, or even a desperate plea to throw me off balance. I would not flinch. I chose my armor carefully. Not the silk celebration dress he had scorned, but my Ori power suit, a tailored, deep navy ensemble I wore when I was questioning CEOs accused of fraud. It was serious, authoritative, and utterly devoid of softness. It was the uniform of a regulator, not a wife. The meeting was set for 10 a.m. I walked into the ORI conference room an hour early to prepare the space. The room itself was a tool. It was cold, sparsely furnished, with a long, dark mahogany table that emphasized distance. The main feature was the large, one-way glass window looking into the secure analysis bullpen. Behind my seat, the digital projection screen was already alive, displaying the first slide of my presentation, a complex, multicolored market capitalization chart designed to look utterly intimidating. I took my seat at the head of the table. Julian would sit across from me, the full weight of my government office, my data, and my unyielding gaze pressing down on him. I was ready to deliver his final assessment. Julian walked into the ORI conference room 10 minutes late, accompanied by his counsel, Catherine Walsh. He looked profoundly terrible. His suit was expensive, but it hung on his frame. His eyes were bloodshot, the forced arrogance he usually wore replaced by a volatile mix of fear and simmering resentment. He did not look at me. I did not offer a greeting. I simply began the meeting. "Welcome," I said, my voice resonating slightly in the cold room. "We are here to discuss the valuation of marital assets. Please turn your attention to the screen." I clicked the remote. The intimidating ORI chart was replaced by my opening slide, Status versus Worth and Analysis of Net Value. "I will not be arguing based on emotional distress," I explained, maintaining eye contact with Catherine Walsh, Julian's lawyer. "I will be arguing based on data." I displayed the next slide. It was a clear, precise comparison, my six-figure income over 3 years versus the total principal and interest of the student loans I absorbed for him. Beside it, I listed the documented monthly cost savings incurred by Julian due to my management of his scheduling, his professional wardrobe, and his household logistics. Julian estimated my contribution to be negligible, I stated, tapping the slide. In fact, my direct financial subsidy and opportunity cost provided him with a minimum 5-year acceleration on his partnership track. "You did not marry me, Julian. You acquired a high-value, non-depreciating asset, and you failed to account for it." I pointed out that he had consistently devalued me based on his perception of my social status, the level he so frequently mentioned, rather than my actual quantifiable worth to his career. His arrogance, the very act of dismissing me, was what allowed me to withdraw without his suspicion. Then I played the ace. I dimmed the lights and hit play on a new file. The audio quality was pristine, captured by the old smartphone hidden in his office. It was a recording of Julian talking to his colleague, Mark, a few weeks earlier. The conversation I had captured after he lost the key file. Julian's voice, raw and stressed. "I cannot focus on this. Mark, you have no idea what it is like. I had to marry her. I needed the steady income and the clean record to get through law school without working outside the firm. It was a necessity. I just need to get through this partnership vote, and then I am kicking her to the curb. She is so needy." The color drained from Julian's face. He stared at the screen, then frantically back at me. He was speechless. He had been blindsided by a piece of evidence he did not even know existed. "That recording," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "proves 2 things. First, your primary motivation for marriage was financial opportunism, not love. Second, it proves that you were actively planning to divest from me immediately upon receipt of the partnership salary increase. This confirms a clear pattern of financial misconduct and asset concealment." I turned to Julian's counsel. "I am not accepting Marcus Sterling's proposed settlement. I will accept Patricia Reeves's terms, which include a significant portion of the projected partnership income, because that income stream was built entirely on my subsidized foundation." Julian finally found his voice, a choked, angry sound. "You have no right. You are going to ruin me. I will fight this in open court. I will destroy your name." I smiled, a real, cold smile this time. "You are right. We are not on the same level. I am not going to fight you in court, Julian, because you are not worth my time." I gestured to the glass window overlooking the secure intelligence floor. "I work to protect the financial stability of the nation. You help the rich avoid paying taxes. My worth is actual. Your value is superficial status. I am not lowering myself to your level again." I stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. "I work for the ORI. If you attempt to threaten or defame me, you will find yourself dealing with an entire intelligence agency. The settlement ends here." Julian and his lawyer were ushered out in utter silence. They did not contest the terms. A few days later, the divorce agreement was signed, ensuring Alara received a substantial settlement, paid off her debt, and established a large, independent fund. I returned to the ORI, not on leave, but in full capacity, using the skills I had honed in secret to fight for myself. Julian's partnership was indefinitely deferred due to a documented lack of personal stability and judgment. He had wanted silence, and in the end, that silence cost him everything he thought he was. Thank you for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below to connect and share your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.